My stepdad didn't yell when he found out about me and my stepbrother. He just looked at both of us like we'd broken something that couldn't be fixed, and that was the moment everything changed. I met James the day we moved into his house in San Jose. He was standing in the driveway, leaning against a truck, arms crossed like he was already done with the situation. I had a suitcase in one hand, and my mom was behind me talking too much, trying to make it feel normal. It wasn't. James looked at me once, then at my mom, then back at me. "Hey," he said. That was the entire introduction. Inside the house, everything felt arranged. Clean counters, staged furniture, nothing personal. Like a place trying to convince itself it was a home. My mom kept smiling. "We're going to make this work," she said. No one answered. Dinner that night was worse. Noah kept asking questions no one cared about. School, plans, hobbies. The kind of questions people ask when they don't know you but think they're supposed to. James barely spoke. I didn't either. At one point, my mom said, "Why don't you two try to spend time together? You're going to be living under the same roof." James didn't even look up. "We're fine." We weren't. For the first few weeks, we avoided each other completely. Different schedules, different spaces. If he was in the living room, I stayed in my room. If I was in the kitchen, he waited. It worked until it didn't. One night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes everything feel louder in your head. I went downstairs to get water. James was already there. He was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up when I walked in. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I shrugged. "Guess not." I poured water, stayed longer than I needed to. He didn't leave. "Your mom always like that?" he asked. I let out a small laugh. "Yeah, she thinks if she plans everything perfectly, nothing can go wrong." He nodded. "My dad's the same. Just louder about it." That was the first real conversation we had. Nothing important. Just complaints. But it felt easy. After that, it started happening more. Late nights in the kitchen. Sitting on opposite sides of the counter, talking about nothing. School, work, our parents, how forced everything felt. No pressure. No expectations. Just someone who understood the situation without needing it explained. James wasn't overly nice. He didn't try to impress me. If anything, he was blunt. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said once. I already know this whole thing is weird. I remember thinking that was the most honest thing anyone had said since we moved in. So I stopped pretending. We never called it bonding. We never talked about being close. It just happened. Weeks turned into months. We built this quiet routine no one else noticed. Dinner with the family, then disappearing into our own worlds. Then somehow ending up in the same place again when the house went quiet. One night, we ended up sitting outside in the backyard. It was colder than I expected. I had a hoodie wrapped around me, and he was sitting on the steps, staring out like he was thinking about something he wasn't saying. "You ever think this is temporary?" I asked. "What is?" "All of this." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Yeah. I think they rushed into it." I nodded. "Same." Silence again. Not awkward. Just there. Then he added, "But we're stuck in it now." That part stayed with me. Because he wasn't wrong. We were stuck. Same house. Same situation. Same feeling that none of it was really ours. And somehow, in the middle of that, he became the only part that felt real. Nothing about it was wrong back then. That's what I keep going back to. There was no moment where a line was crossed. No sudden shift. No realization that something had changed. It was just two people in the same situation, getting used to each other. That's how it started. And if I'm being honest, that's probably why I didn't see where it was going. If there was a moment things shifted between me and James, it wasn't obvious. It didn't feel like a turning point. It just stopped feeling temporary. That's the only way I can explain it. At first, we were just surviving the same situation. Same house, same tension, same parents trying to force something that didn't exist. But over time, it became less about that and more about him. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. It showed up in small ways. Like how he noticed things no one else did. One afternoon, I came home later than usual. I dropped my bag by the door and went straight to the kitchen. He was already there, sitting at the counter. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't even look at him. "Yeah." He waited a second. "You always say that when you're not." I stopped moving. It annoyed me a little. Not what he said, just that he was right. "Just tired," I muttered. He nodded like he didn't believe me but wasn't going to push it. "There's food in the fridge. I made extra." That caught me off guard. "You cook now?" I asked. He shrugged. "Figured someone should." I almost smiled. It sounds small, but that's how it was with him. Nothing dramatic. Just consistent. And that consistency started to matter more than I expected. We didn't hang out during the day much. We still kept that distance when everyone else was around. But at night, it was like the house reset. Same routine. Kitchen. Backyard. Sometimes just sitting on opposite sides of the room, doing our own thing but not really alone. One night, I was sitting on the floor in the living room, going through assignments. He walked in, tossed his keys on the table, and dropped onto the couch. "You're going to burn yourself out doing that every night," he said. "I have deadlines." "You always have deadlines." I looked up at him. "What do you want me to do? Just stop caring." He leaned his head back against the couch. "No, just don't let it eat everything else." I stared at him for a second. "Like what?" I asked. He glanced down at me. "Like actually having a life." I let out a quiet laugh. "You're one to talk." He smirked slightly. "Yeah, but I'm not pretending I have one." That was the thing about James. He didn't pretend. And being around that made it harder for me to keep pretending too. We started talking more about real things. Not just complaints about our parents or the house. Actual stuff. What we wanted. What we didn't. The things we were trying to figure out but didn't say out loud to anyone else. One night, he asked, "You ever feel like you're just doing what's expected, not what you actually want?" I didn't answer right away. "Yeah," I said finally. "All the time." He nodded like that confirmed something. Same. There was this understanding between us that didn't need explaining. And that's where things started to blur. Not in a physical way. Not yet. Just emotionally. He became the first person I thought about when something happened. Good or bad. If I had a bad day, I knew he'd be in the kitchen later. If something went right, I wanted to tell him before anyone else. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like having someone in your corner. But looking back, I can see how much space that started to take up. There were nights we'd stay up way too late, just talking. At some point, he said, "You know we don't have to do the whole fake family thing, right?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't owe them that. We can just exist in the same house. Doesn't mean we have to act like anything we're not." I thought about that longer than I should have. "Yeah," I said. "I guess." But what I didn't say was that we were already doing that. Just not in the way anyone else would have expected. There were moments that stood out more than others. Like the first time he noticed something was really off. I had a fight with my mom. One of those arguments that starts small and turns into something bigger because neither side backs down. I went in my room after, slammed the door harder than I meant to. I stayed there for a while, trying to calm down. Then there was a knock. I didn't answer. The door opened anyway. James leaned against the frame. "You good?" I said I'm fine, I snapped. He didn't react to the tone. Just walked in, sat down on the edge of the bed. "She does that thing where she keeps talking until you give in," he said. I looked at him. "Yeah." He nodded. "My dad does it too." There was a pause. Then he added, "You don't have to go back out there right now." That hit harder than it should have. No advice. No fixing it. Just permission to not deal with it. I sat down next to him. We didn't talk for a minute. Then I said quietly, "I hate how everything feels forced here." He looked straight ahead. "Me too." That moment stayed with me longer than anything else. Because it felt like we were on the same side of something. And once you feel that with someone, it's hard to go back. After that, the distance between us got smaller. Not in ways anyone else would notice. But enough. We sat closer. Conversations lasted longer. Silences felt more comfortable. There was one night I remember clearly. We were outside again, sitting on the steps. I had my knees pulled in, arms wrapped around them. He was next to me, not too close, not far either. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked. "All the time," he said. "Where would you go?" He shrugged. "Anywhere that doesn't feel like this." I glanced at him. "You'd really just leave?" He looked back at me. "Wouldn't you?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know. And for the first time, I realized that if he left, this whole thing would feel a lot worse. That thought sat heavier than I expected. He stood up after a while. "It's late. You should get some sleep." "Yeah," I said. But neither of us moved right away. There was this pause. Not awkward. Not normal either. Just something hanging there that neither of us acknowledged. Then he walked inside. And I stayed there a little longer than I needed to. That was the point where things stopped being simple. We didn't cross a line. But we were definitely getting closer to one. And the worst part is, I think we both knew it. We just didn't say it out loud. Time didn't slow things down between me and James. If anything, it made everything feel more normal. That's what made it dangerous. Because nothing about it felt like a mistake while it was happening. After I graduated, I moved out to Santa Cruz for college. It should have created distance. A reset. A clean break from everything that had been building. It didn't. At first, we didn't talk as much. New schedule, new place, new people. I tried to focus on that. Tried to act like I was finally stepping into my own life. But every now and then, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, thinking about texting him before anyone else. Sometimes I did. "Classes are already a mess." He'd reply, "Told you." Or, "This place is louder than I expected. Give it a week." Short messages. Nothing deep. But they kept happening. And eventually, they got longer. Calls started too. At first, it felt casual. Just checking in. Then it turned into late-night conversations again, just like before. Different place. Same pattern. I remember one night clearly. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, back against the couch, staring at notes I wasn't actually reading. I called him without thinking. He picked up on the second ring. "You sound stressed," he said immediately. I let out a quiet breath. I didn't even say anything yet. "You don't have to." That line hit the same way it always did. I leaned my head back. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Doing what? All of it. School. This whole moving forward thing. There was a pause. Then he said, "You are." "How do you know?" "Because you don't quit when things get hard." I didn't respond right away. No one had ever said that to me so simply. We stayed on the phone longer than we should have. And when we finally hung up, the apartment felt quieter than before. Not peaceful. Just empty. That's when I realized something I didn't want to admit. Distance hadn't changed anything. If anything, it made it clearer. Because without him there, I could feel exactly how much space he had taken up in my life. I tried to ignore it. Focused on classes. Friends. Normal things. I met people. Went out. Built something that looked like independence. But none of it felt the same. No one else felt the same. And I hated that comparison. Because it wasn't fair to anyone else. Or to me. Months passed like that. Then years. We didn't talk every day anymore, but whenever we did, it was like no time had passed. Easy. Familiar. Too easy. By the time I moved back to San Jose after college, things had settled into something I couldn't really define. We weren't close in a way you'd explain to other people. But we weren't distant either. Just there. Still part of each other's lives, whether we acknowledged it or not. I got a job as a marketing manager. Long hours, constant deadlines. It kept me busy enough not to think too much. James had moved out by then. He was working as an electrician, building something of his own. Small jobs at first, then bigger ones. He didn't talk about it much, but I could tell he was doing well. We saw each other occasionally. Family dinners. Holidays. Nothing unusual on the surface. We didn't sit next to each other anymore. Didn't stay up late talking like before. But every once in a while, our eyes would meet across the room. And it felt like stepping back into something we had never really left. Then came the trip. My mom planned it. Anniversary. Big deal. Wanted both of us there. San Diego. I almost didn't go. Work was the excuse I gave. Deadlines, meetings, things I couldn't move. But that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was him. I knew being around James again, for more than a few hours, would bring everything back to the surface. And I wasn't sure I wanted to deal with that. Then he texted me. "If you're not going, I'm not sitting through that alone." I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then I typed back, "You'll survive." He replied almost immediately. "Not worth the risk." I didn't mean to smile. But I did. And that was enough. I went. The first day felt exactly like every other forced family event. My mom overplanning everything. Noah trying to keep things structured. Conversations that sounded normal but didn't feel it. James kept his distance. I did too. It was easier that way. Safer. But it didn't last. The second night, I couldn't sleep. Different room, unfamiliar space, same restless feeling. I stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cooler than I expected. Quiet, except for distant noise from the street below. I leaned against the railing, just trying to clear my head. "You always wake up around this time?" I turned. James was standing in the doorway. Of course he was. I let out a small breath. Couldn't sleep. He nodded like that was enough explanation. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. For a minute, neither of us said anything. Then he leaned against the railing next to me. "Place is nicer than I expected," he said. "Yeah." Silence again. Not uncomfortable. Familiar. That same feeling from years ago, like we had picked up right where we left off. "You've been busy," he said. "With work. With everything." I glanced at him. "You too." He shrugged. "Yeah." Another pause. Then he said, "You seem different." I frowned slightly. "Different how?" "Harder to read." I looked away. "That's probably a good thing," I said. He didn't respond. I could feel his eyes on me, but I didn't look back. Because I already knew what that meant. We stayed out there longer than we should have. Talking about small things at first. Work. Life. Nothing important. But the longer we stood there, the more everything else faded. Until it was just us again. Like before. Like it had always been. And that's when I felt it. That shift. Not sudden. Not overwhelming. Just there. Like something we had ignored for years, finally deciding it wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. But the tension was there now. Clear. Unavoidable. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't fully faced before. This wasn't just familiarity. It wasn't just history. It was something else. Something we should have stopped. But didn't. And standing there on that balcony, with everything quiet around us, I knew we were about to cross a line neither of us could take back. We didn't plan it. That's the part one keep going back to, like it somehow makes a difference. There wasn't some moment where we decided anything. No conversation. No line drawn and then crossed. It just happened. We stayed out on that balcony too long. That's what started it. The conversation slowed down. The space between us didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like something waiting to close. I remember turning slightly toward him, about to say something I don't even remember now. And he was already looking at me. Not casually. Not the way he used to. There was something else there. Something neither of us had ever acknowledged before. I should have stepped back. That would have been the right move. The obvious one. But I didn't. Neither did he. There was a second where everything could have gone differently. Then it didn't. And once it happened, there wasn't any confusion about it. No pretending it didn't mean something. No acting like it was an accident. I pulled back first. We can't do this, I said, too quickly. My voice sounded different. Tighter. He nodded right away. I know. That should have been it. That should have ended everything before it even started. But neither of us moved. We just stood there, still too close, like neither of us knew how to step away from something we hadn't meant to start. I didn't plan that, he said. I know. Another pause. Then he added, quieter, but I don't think it came out of nowhere either. That hit harder than I expected. Because he was right. This didn't start on that balcony. It started years ago. We just never called it what it was. I don't want to mess everything up, I said. He let out a slow breath. Yeah, but the way he said it didn't sound certain. It sounded like he already knew that might not be possible. We went back inside after that. Separate rooms. No goodnight. No follow-up. Just silence. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed it. Not just what happened, but everything leading up to it. All the conversations. The late nights. The way we understood each other without trying. It stopped feeling harmless the moment I saw it clearly. By morning, I told myself it was done. A mistake. Something that happened once and wouldn't happen again. That's what I needed it to be. At breakfast, everything looked normal. My mom was already talking about plans for the day. Noah was checking his phone. The same routine, same tone. James walked in a few minutes later. He didn't look at me. Not once. And I didn't look at him either. We played our roles perfectly. If anyone noticed anything, they didn't say it. The whole day passed like that. Distance. Silence. Avoidance. And for a while, I thought maybe that was enough. Maybe we could just go back. Pretend it didn't happen. But that night proved we couldn't. I went back out to the balcony again. I told myself it was just for air. But I think I already knew. He was there a few minutes later. Of course he was. Neither of us said anything at first. Then he leaned against the railing, same as before. We shouldn't be out here again, I said. Probably not. But he didn't leave. Neither did I. That was a mistake, I added. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Another pause. Then he said, do you actually believe that? I didn't answer. Because I didn't. And he could tell. That's the problem, he said quietly. I looked at him then. For a second, I almost said something that would have ended it. Something final. But instead, I said nothing. And that silence said everything. After that, the distance we tried to create disappeared faster than it should have. We didn't talk about it. We didn't define anything. But we stopped pretending it hadn't happened. And once that happened, it didn't stop. It wasn't constant. It wasn't reckless. It was controlled. Quiet. Hidden. Which somehow made it worse. Because it meant we were choosing it. Every time. After the trip ended, we went back to our normal lives. Or at least, what looked like normal. Work. Family. Responsibilities. But under all of that, there was something else now. Something we didn't share with anyone. We started talking again. More than before. Calls. Messages. Late nights that stretched longer than they should have. And it felt normal. That's the part one still struggled to explain. It didn't feel like we were doing something wrong. It felt like we had finally stopped ignoring something that had been there for years. We told ourselves things to make it easier. We didn't grow up as siblings. We're not actually related. This doesn't change who we are. All of it sounded reasonable when it was just us. But deep down, we both knew what it would look like to everyone else. That's why we kept it quiet. No one knew. For almost a year. And during that year, nothing fell apart. No consequences. No tension. Just us. Which made it easy to believe we had gotten away with it. That maybe it wasn't as big of a deal as it seemed. Until the day everything came out. And the version of our lives we had built in private collided with the reality everyone else saw. That's when it stopped being just ours. And everything started breaking. I keep thinking about that balcony. About how easy it would have been to walk away. How simple it would have been to just stop before anything actually happened. And I try to tell myself that's where everything went wrong. But the truth is, it didn't start there. It started long before that. In quiet conversations. In small moments. In the way we understood each other when no one else did. That's why it never felt like a mistake when it was happening. It felt like something that made sense. Something real. And maybe that's the worst part. Because now I'm left trying to figure out how something that felt so right to us could break everything around us this completely. I lost the version of my family that used to exist. I lost the idea that things would ever feel normal again. And somehow, I still haven't lost him. We've tried to step back, tried to create distance, tried to undo something that clearly can't be undone. But every time, it pulls us back into the same place. Not fully together. Not fully apart. Just stuck. And I don't know what that says about me. I don't know if I'm holding on to something real, or just refusing to face how much it's already cost. All I know is, if I could go back to that moment on the balcony, I'm not sure I'd walk away. And I think that's the part that would upset everyone the most.